Okay, Barry, the part about Brook being in the battle convoy makes sense, but the other thing just doesn't add up with the timeline. You need to sort out the timeline better. Okay, hold on. I think I got it. I think I figured it out. All right, carry the 7, divide by Yorki. Let's see here. Add the Rumbar Pirates. Subtract by the West Blue. And add the Afro. Okay, I think we figured it out. Okay, I'm just going to dive right into this because there's been a lot of stuff going on with Brook lately. I know a lot of people didn't expect Brook's character to be focused on, like, pretty much most of the comments weren't even talking about, like, okay, there was a lot of comments that were talking about Emu, you know, being Emu and taking over Gunko and everything like that. But a good chunk of the comments that were just hilarious to me were like, okay, so this is going to be Usopp's arc, right? And then Brook and Chopper just slide over and just be like, yo, Chopper's like, hey, what's going on? Usopp, right now Chopper's better than you, so you better get your head in the game here, man, okay? There's still options. There's still opportunities. Usopp could be the one to break out of the bandages that they were all being contained in. Last chapter, he did say we got to figure out a way to get out of here. Maybe Usopp's going to be the one to figure it out, and then he'll figure out also a way to defeat Gunko. Like Chopper is going after Scopper, which, by the way, that's hilarious. Chopper, the doctor, is going after Scopper. I'm not a rapper, but you could do something with that, right? Okay, absolutely, right. Okay, so Chopper is going to go save Scopper, and then maybe Scopper's going to tell Chopper about how, you know, to defeat the Gods Knights with the hockey and everything. Maybe Usopp could figure it out all on his own. Maybe he figures out a different method or, like, something arrives at the same conclusion. There's still options with Usopp. Okay, but moving on now to the big thing. Gunko and Brook know each other. How is that a thing? All right, so is Gunko Brook's long-lost daughter, who has somehow turned into a God's Knight? We'll get to that. Drum roll, please, on if that's true. Yeah, there's a drum roll. Okay, all right. And no. I don't think Gunko is going to be Brook's daughter. There's a couple of reasons for that, but I'm just going to throw it out there, and a lot of people have already figured this out as well. There was a lot of comments about this, and I tend to agree. Gunko is more than likely Yorki's daughter. Okay, Yorki, best friend of Brook, the former captain of the Rumbar crew, probably the one that started the Rumbar crew. And Brook was the first mate, and then they go traveling around the Grand Line. They meet Laboon in the West Blue. He follows them into Paradise. He stays at the Twin Capes, and then they continue on, and at some point, they get afflicted with this disease. It looked very similar to the disease at, like, Shandora, way back in, like, Nolan's backstory with the trees and the tree fever and everything like that. Could have been the same thing. Could have been something different. We don't know. So half of the crew got afflicted with this disease. They stayed behind. We do not know what happened to them. The implication is they all died, but it's One Piece, so yeah, you never know. In fact, the idea that Yorki could still be alive is something that's popped up quite a bit. There's a lot of people talking about that. But anyway, at that point, the Rumbar crew split into 2 groups. Brook took up the mantle as the captain, and then him and the crew continued onward until eventually they reached the Florian Triangle. They were ambushed by a bunch of pirates that used poison weapons, and we all know the story from there. Okay, Brook had already consumed the Yomi Yomi no Mi at this point, and so he died, came back to life as a Skellebones, and he stayed on the ship for 50 years until the Straw Hats eventually bumped into him, and yo ho ho ho, can I see your pansies? You know, that whole shtick, okay? We're all aware of that. All right, awesome. Okay, so Gunko, I mean, first and foremost, Gunko seems to have, like, blonde hair. We don't know exactly because she's just been in the manga so far. Yorki had blonde hair. She at least has, like, light-colored hair. It's very possible that, you know, Brook, you know, his wife or whoever was the mother of Gunko could have had the lighter hair, and then that's how she was, you know, whatever. But here's the thing. In the flashbacks, when you see Gunko's memories in the last chapter. This is something I think Oda is, like, placing in there for a reason, okay? The first flashback we get is Gunko is remembering herself. I'm assuming it's herself. Some people are saying, oh, maybe that's Gunko's mom or something. No, I think that is supposed to be her, but she has longer hair, and she's screaming for her father. He was like, father! And then she's, like, crying and everything like that, right? The next memory is her as a child walking hand in hand with Brook. And it's clearly Brook, because Brook has the afro and everything in the silhouette. Brook has one of the most recognizable silhouettes in all of One Piece. It's kind of hard to not notice Brook, okay? And so he's humming and he's singing a song, and he says, oh, I want to go out to sea and be a pirate someday, so that was clearly Brook, right? Then Gunko kind of snaps out of it, and she's like, wait a minute. Oh, was that Brook the entire time? Brook, I'm coming. I'm going to save you. And so she goes to rush over to where the Straw Hats are. That's at the point Emu takes over. And we're not even talking about that today. That's not even a discussion. That's a whole other discussion point on what's going up with Emu right now, okay? Spoiler alert, Emu's being a drama queen again in a big way. But we'll get to Emu later in another video. Okay, so Brook and Yorki were best friends. And they were both probably together on that battle convoy in the West Blue. Okay, so the very little stuff we know about Brook prior to him dying and even prior to him joining the Rumbar Pirates is when he officially joined the Straw Hat crew, he was kind of giving a little bit of an autobiography about himself, right? Remember the scene at Thriller Bark when he was done playing the piano, they sing Bink Sake, everybody has a fun time, he puts the tone dial away, and then he's like, okay, I am Dead Bones Brook, known to the government as Humming Brook. I have a bounty of 33 million berries. Back in my day, that was worth a lot. You got to adjust for bounty inflation. You know, it's just like with Dorian Bragi. He says that I used to lead a battle convoy in a certain kingdom, and then I was captain of the Rumbar Pirates, and now I pledge my allegiance to you, Monkey D. Luffy, as the musician of the Straw Hat crew. I'm sorry, Chopper. Okay? So that was the setup for that, okay? So, what is a battle convoy, first of all? Like, I just assumed, like, he was in the military in his kingdom. So, a battle convoy, specifically, is a convoy of ships. It doesn't have to be ships. It doesn't have to be a naval thing. It could be another thing on land, considering this is One Piece and, like, everything is on the water. It was mostly on the water. It was like a naval convoy sort of thing. The whole point of it is to protect something. That's what a battle convoy does, right? You're protecting merchant vessels, or you're protecting nobility. Like, if the king and the queen of Brook's kingdom needed to travel to Reverie, probably going to have some protection in the form of a battle convoy. We even saw this when various kingdoms were heading to, various kings and queens and princesses and everything were heading towards Reverie. Some of them had protection from their own kingdom. The Marines, like Kobe and Helmeppo, remember they stopped those pirates that were trying to kidnap the king and queen of Lelucia. I don't know about Lelucia, where it is, but apparently they were helping there. Right, so that's kind of what a battle convoy is all about. A few other breadcrumbs of things we know about Brook's past that we learned in Elbaf. We know he went to school, because when they were walking around the Walrus School, Brook was like, oh, yo, a school, how nostalgic. I mean, technically speaking, it could also mean that he was a teacher at some point too, like he went to school in this kingdom. It seems very clearly Brook had a proper education, not something I could say with all the Straw Hats. Not all the Straw Hats went to school. I'm assuming Nami and Nojiko were, homeschooled by Bellamere. We didn't see a school in Usopp's village, so, maybe Banshina just homeschooled him. Probably a lot of homeschooling in One Piece is what I'm saying, right? Brook seemed to have, like, a formal education, or perhaps he was a teacher or a professor at some point. He seems like that kind of guy. I think he would be suited for it. At least being a music teacher, I think he would have been fine with that. Also, we learned recently he knows who the Gods Knights are. Like, he knew. Like, the Gods Knights. Yes, that woman is probably a Gods Knight. They rank even higher than the Celestial Dragons. They're really scary. They're really powerful. Okay, not your every ordinary citizen in the One Piece world is probably going to have interactions with the Gods Knights. Probably might not even know who the Gods Knights really, truly are, okay? So that all ties together in a way that I feel like, yeah, Brook had a status in his kingdom. He wasn't the king, he wasn't the prince, he wasn't the secret prince or whatever. No, he wasn't anything like that. He was just probably in the military, some kind of minor nobility. I always got the air of Brook there, that his parents might have been like some kind of nobility and stuff like that. Maybe not, maybe whatever. Maybe he started off as a commoner and rose through the ranks. But he eventually got to that status of leading a battle convoy. And I think Yorki was also alongside him. Brook, in a lot of ways, is like a knight, like a noble kind of like chivalrous Renaissance knight. And to go further with that, we have Brook's signature technique, Hana Uta Sancho Yahazugiri. a 3-verse humming arrow notch slash. I'm going to pause right there. Arrow, Gunko, arrow no mi, whatever. Put a pin in that. That might tie back to something. However, did you know that's not the original name of that technique? It is something that I completely forgot about. I had to go back and double check. When Brook was fighting Ryuma during Thriller Bark, okay? Ryuma was saying, like, oh, I will finish you off with Yahazugiri, my signature technique, because Brook's shadow was inside of Ryuma. And Brook is on the ground, and this is right before Zoro and Frankie showed up, right? And Zoro fought against Ryuma and ultimately defeated him. But Brook is on the ground, kind of defeated, and he's like, don't talk about that technique. Don't use that technique's name. You don't know anything about that technique. The original name of that move, the 3-verse humming arrow notch slash, was the Requiem la Bandoro. That was the original name. And Requiem, as in like a song that would play at a funeral, a requiem for a dream, as it were. Da 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 da. I just realized I'm wearing my My Chemical Romance shirt. Hold on, and it has a skeleton on it. I just realized. So come one, come all to this tragic affair. Brook and Gunko. Okay. Right, so a requiem is like a song that's really sad for dead people. Okay, the requiem is a sad song. Okay, fine. Bandoro is like a streamer that knights would have as they ride into battle. Or probably not the knights themselves, but like their squires or pages or whatever. It's a symbol of heraldry, okay, that a knight would have, right? It's like your heraldry in the form of a flag, in the form of a streamer that you would like bring into battle. Like the Lannisters are coming, or, the Tyrells are there, like that's kind of what they are, okay? So that invokes imagery of like Renaissance, the medieval era, knights and shining armor, chivalry and virtue, and like, I will stab you with this sword, aha, like that's the kind of idea, and Brook definitely gives off that vibe, okay? So, if Yorki and Brook were both at this kingdom, in the battle convoy, maybe both leading ships and stuff like that, like Yorki had his, and then Brook had his, or whatever, and then one day, Yorki is like, I want to go, maybe Yorki and Brook were both best friends, so they both wanted to be pirates, like, let's go out to sea. What if Yorki is Gunko's father, and so that's the image of, in Gunko's memory, like, father, don't go, and Brook was just like, actually, maybe Gunko's godfather. Like, honestly, if Brook and Yorki were best friends and Yorki was Gunko's father, it'd be like, Brook, I want you to be Gunko's godfather. I can think of nobody else. So the reason why, like another big one why I don't think that Brook is just the father of Gunko is, for one thing, I think it's a good twist that Oda's going to pull. Like, it's setting it up like it's going to be that. But the other thing, when she reclaimed her memories, she wasn't calling Brook her father. She was calling him Brook by his name. Now, you could say, and I even brought up in the review, look, Gunko's memory is, like, all scrambled right now because of whatever Eam did to her to, like, possess and give her the powers and immortality and all that kind of jazz, right? So it's totally feasible that she's just not all there right now, and she's like, wait, what, huh, memories? Brook, you're Brook, right? But now, I think it might be a thing, like, she knew Brook as, like, her godfather or maybe, like, her cool uncle, It's just, like, Yorki and Brook weren't related, but it's just like, hey, Gunko, I'm your dad, Yorki, and this is your Uncle Brook. Yoo-hoo-hoo! And so she grew up around Yorki and Brook and probably some of the other members of the Rumbar crew, if some of them were originally all members of this convoy that went off to join, the pirate crew, and they met Laboon at one point, and then they head into the Grand Line. It's very possible. And so I'm thinking that makes actually way more sense, okay, here. And another big thing, earlier in this arc, Brook has been bringing up occasionally, especially whenever, Gunko was making her appearance and attacking the crew, like, Brook kind of looked at her sort of like question mark, like, wait a minute, you look kind of familiar. And even after being beaten down, and in the most recent chapter too, Brook was like, they really do seem familiar. Now, he's like just talking to himself. He's not really talking to like any of the Straw Hats in particular or anything like that. Like, she looks familiar. They really do act similar, okay? So, if that was Brook's daughter, right, like somebody that Brook, like, raised, I feel like this would be brought up a little bit more to the forefront. Brook would say something like, oh my god, is it you, Gunko? It's been so long, you know? Maybe, and by the way, maybe her name wasn't even Gunko back then, right? Because that's another thing, too. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure they've overheard her name at this point. Maybe they haven't. No, I'm pretty sure they have. I'm pretty sure somebody over in the Denden Mushi or somebody has mentioned her name is Gunko, right? So maybe it's a different name than it used to be, right, or whatever. Brook, now granted, Brook is 90. His memory maybe isn't all what it used to be. The last 2 years, he's been the Soul King. For 50 years before that, he was stuck in the middle of a Florian Triangle on a destroyed ship, not able to go anywhere, kind of went insane. And then before that, he was a pirate captain, and before that, he was a first mate, and before that, so we're dialing back the clock like, I don't know, at least 60, 70 years here, back when he was, like, working as the commander of this convoy in this kingdom, right? That was a long, long, long time ago. But even so, if Brook had an actual biological daughter that he raised, you know, and was there for her birth and everything like that, you'd feel like that would be, he would say something more than just, huh, she looks kind of familiar. You know, like, I don't know. It seems more of like somebody that he used to know back in the kingdom that he hasn't seen in a very long time. And so it's like, huh, she looks a little different, but they look kind of similar. Also the fact 50 plus years have passed. Honestly, since like the last time Brook would have seen her before he went out to sea to be a pirate, probably over 60 years ago since he last saw her, okay? We don't know exactly how old Brook was when he left and joined the Rumbar crew, and I guess we also don't really know how long since the Rumbar crew, from the beginning of their journey in the West all the way until the end of their journey at the Florian Triangle. We don't know how long that took. The Straw Hats are making really good time with this. You know, they were able to get from East Blue to the first half of the Red Line and to Sabaody Archipelago in like less than a year. But maybe other pirate crews. Plus, the Grand Line was a lot more dangerous back then, keep in mind. So there's also that. But anyway, so Brook is like, oh, it can't be her. I mean, that was, 60 plus years ago. Obviously, she would be a very old woman right now, or she would be dead. So maybe Brook is there like, oh, you remind me of somebody that, I used to know back in the West Blue a very, very long time ago. Maybe Brook is there kind of running it through his head like maybe that is her daughter or maybe even possibly granddaughter, because Brook is aware of the Gods Knights. I'm sure Brook does not know every single facet. Like, Brook knowing about the Gods Knights is not the same thing as like, oh, I know the Gods Knights are immortal and these are all the abilities they have and this is what they can do and here's who they all are and everything like that. Obviously he wouldn't know everything about them. He wouldn't know how to defeat them and stuff. Then we get the whole eternal youth sort of thing getting involved, and that'll be more in Emu's video when I talk about that, but there's a lot of ideas there on exactly how it works. Clearly there is some kind of eternal youth or immortality, or at least, stasising you in a particular age, like the Goro say. Like, Saturn has looked the way he has, for well over 200 years. So that ability does exist in Emu's toolbox, okay? We don't know what Emu actually looks like, but we're going to assume that when Emu takes off the cloak and everything like that, they're not going to be maybe some shriveled up old zombie. I'm assuming they're going to look the way they did back during the Void Century, like they haven't aged at all. That's at least what I'm assuming, right? We might have like Emu taking off the cloak and be like this super, like that person in SpongeBob in the chocolate episode, like, chocolate! Like this old shriveled up, kind of slug person. Maybe that's Emu. However, yeah, so there's a lot of talks about this, but when the last scene, when Gunko was taken over by Emu, was possessed, and Emu began to talk through her, like, you will now see the power of a god, her hair began to grow out, and we also saw in her flashback, she had longer hair. So, to piece this together, they grew up in this kingdom. Brook, Yorki had Gunko, right? And Brook knew about Gunko. It was all one big happy family, I suppose, for a little while. Brook would sing songs and everything like that, okay. And that's also why Gunko later on became a fan of the Soul King Brook. Maybe Gunko did not connect the dots there because, once again, Brook would have been somebody that lived a very long time ago, and she didn't have the memories yet. And the memories were blocked from her past, okay? So maybe when she heard that there was a new recording artist, Soul King Brook, maybe it like, Brook, that kind of, no, couldn't be. And then it just gets blotted out, but she knows she likes the music. This kind of goes back a little bit to Egghead when we were learning about, like, there's certain aspects about somebody that you cannot erase. And so Gunko always liked Brook's music, so now that he's the Soul King and singing, even though she doesn't have the memories of him anymore, she still knows she likes his music. There it is. So they grew up on that kingdom, and at some point, whether you say Brook was the father or Yorki was the father, they left Gunko behind. Because there's that one scene where she's screaming, "Father!" and she's crying, right? And so that's where that happened there. And then something happened with Gunko, who was left abandoned and alone. Maybe the Gods Knights attacked. Oh, boy. Oh, dude. What if... Holy shit. Okay. What if Brook and Yorki left to go be pirates? Kind of similar to Yasopp. Yasopp was like, "Sorry, son. Sorry, wife. The open sea is calling." And so he just left, right? There's a precedent for it in the One Piece world. It could have happened again, right? And in this instance, I would kind of wish that Brook wasn't Gunko's father. There could even be a moment where Yorki is like, "Brook, it's finally time. I got a pirate ship. I got the flag. Let's go. Be pirates." And Brook is like, "Yo-ho-ho, but aren't you going to leave your daughter behind, Yorki? That's kind of mean." It's like, "The open sea's calling us." It's like, okay, I guess. Sure. Whatever. Bye, Gunko. No, don't leave. Oh, Yorki, she's crying. Whatever. Don't look back. We're sailing the seas. Okay, so they leave, right? What if a few years later, the hunting contest that the Celestial Dragons like to hold, maybe that happened on the kingdom where they grew up. Brook and Yorki aren't around anymore, but Gunko is. And then that's where Emu gets involved, and that's where, you know, Gunko becomes a God's Knight, makes this Faustian deal of, like, "I'm tired. I don't even care anymore. You know, my father abandoned me. Just make me a God's Knight. Make me immortal. Make me not feel." And so they're like, "Oh, okay." And just, they did that. Now, I don't know the whole process there, but yeah, there was maybe a reason for that, okay? Like, somebody left behind from Brook's past that turned into this, okay? So, Gunko is probably still not quite as old as Brook, but Gunko herself might be, like, in her 70s or 80s, okay? Brook is 90, right? And so that was the difference there. Probably maybe closer to, like, in her 70s, probably. But she still looks like she did back then. Maybe that's when she got changed into a God's Knight and the immortality. She had longer hair at the time, like in her flashback, and so she cut her hair since. But whenever Emu's taking over, it resets or something back to the way she was when she originally became a God's Knight. Still not sure how all this works. We'll learn about that as we go. But that's the idea I'm sticking with right now, that Gunko was Yorki's daughter, Brook was the godfather, they all grew up, had a great time, you know, on the kingdom, they were singing songs and everything was awesome, and then they decided to leave to go be pirates. Gunko was sad, maybe even one of the Gorosei or something show up, maybe it's the hunting contest, maybe it was something else, and then Gunko got changed into a God's Knight, and then here we are now. And, you know, obviously they didn't really recognize each other at first because it's been a very long time for Brook. And from Gunko's perspective, her memory was wiped. Also, Brook is a skeleton now, so you're not going to really... I was like, Brook, I remember, well, you know, he does have the afro, so I'm going to say it actually is more of the memory wiping rather than just him dying and being a skeleton, right? You know, because he has a very, like I said, he has a very distinctive silhouette. So if Gunko had access to those memories at the beginning, I think she would have immediately recognized Brook. And also, that's a reason why that didn't happen. Like when Gunko showed up on the ship and kidnapped Colin, I was like, why didn't she recognize Brook immediately? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, now it makes sense. Memory wiping. Okay, there it is. Anyway, so that's the idea. Let me know down below. Thanks to everybody that commented and all that stuff. This is an exciting time to be a Brook fan, if nothing else. Usopp, maybe you'll get a time in this story at some point. No, okay, before I leave, let me just bring this up. I was talking to one of my friends the other night, my friend Patrick, who also reads One Piece, right? And we're chatting about this Usopp thing, about Usopp not really having a big moment. And my friend Patrick is just like, well, you know, they are fighting actual gods right now, and Usopp is just kind of a normal dude. And you're like, you know what? He's not wrong, right? Like, Usopp, yeah, he's got pop greens and stuff and a little bit of observation hockey, but they are fighting against actual gods now. So it's like, unless you're Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, or Jinbei, you know, what is, like, Usopp's just a guy, you know, like, what's he gonna do, right? So you kind of feel that from him. Maybe that's the issue Oda's having right now. Like, I just don't know. Like, it doesn't make any sense for Usopp to, like, defeat Summers or something, so that's not gonna happen, right? I don't know. Maybe at some point we'll have something with Usopp. But for right now, let's focus on Brook and possibly a little bit of Chopper. All right, and Scopper. All right, have a great night, everybody. This will be Tekking, signing out.